What's up, folks? I'm back with another reaction, back with some more A Flock of Seagulls, and we're going back to their self-titled debut album in 1982. Once again, big ups to Han Solo for allowing me to start reacting to this material, which I jumped at the chance. He mentioned it was one of the things he was putting into this folder that he's given me access to, and I sort of like immediately wanted to move on that. So yeah, very excited to start going through the material. As I mentioned before, I reacted first to sort of the one tune that I really remembered, even though I hadn't listened to it for a little while before doing the reaction, but that was I Ran So Far Away. And yeah, now I'm just going to continue to go through the rest of the album. I did react to the first album, the first track on the album, so we're now moving to the second track. And the second track is called Messages. You know, I mentioned in the first couple videos that I briefly speculate about the title, just, you know, what themes or ideas it makes me think of and how that might be interpreted or the different directions that might take. I have mentioned, though, when I react to other groups, you know, Duran Duran, Depeche Mode, and so on, that when I see a single word title, it can sometimes be more opaque, a bit harder to interpret, a bit more difficult to penetrate or access, partially because, you know, even if it's a concept that suggests a lot, not only the specific denotation, but other connotations, which is to say, like a denotation, if you say like airplane, like, well, that has one specific meaning. It's, you know, sort of a conveyance that goes through the air. It's a type of transportation. But there's also a bunch of connotations, things that are associated with it but are not specifically defined by that word, which is to say, you know, you need pilots, you need a crew on the ground, you need a walkway that leads to the plane, you need an airline, you need an airport, you need a runway. These are all things associated with an airplane, but they're not directly defined by the word airplane. There are connotations related to the word airplane. So yeah, again, like sometimes single word titles are hard to penetrate, even if there is a lot of connotations and a lot of ways you could take with it. And in part that is, without further context, without more words, it's a bit difficult to, you know, understand which one of those paths it might take, what context it might appear in. But messages, generally speaking, it's communication between one person and another, or between many people, or between, you know, groups of organizations and, you know, larger bodies of people. But yes, it's informational content. Now, that informational content could be sort of empirical. It could relate to, you know, like physical matters and objects in the world, but it could relate to emotional experience or understanding. It could relate to sort of social or cultural matters. The nature of the information carried in a message could manifest in a number of different ways. It could be a coded message, which is to say it could be a message that would only be discernible to some, perhaps deliberately to obscure the information, or at least you know, indicative of some specific idiosyncratic or eccentric association between the two people transmitting and or receiving the message. So yeah, there's a number of different ways it could go, but generally speaking, it is informational content that is transmitted from one source to another. So we'll have to see how that manifests in the song, but let's get it. This is A Flock of Seagulls, Messages, from their 1982 self-titled album. Come on! They clearly like making tunes with some pace and energy. I love it. And the guitar work stands out. No reason why? What about them, sir? That little instrumental interlude, that's nice. I love the edge to it. There's some synth work in it. Some whispered lines, maybe? Describe the mood. It's a complicated tone. It's energetic, it's driven. I like those backing vocals. Or maybe layered. I'm not sure if it's him in both cases. I love that ending too. Like quick, dramatic, austere. Yeah, very cool. I will say I love his voice, but in the two songs that I've now listened to that I didn't know from back in the day, whereas again I Ran as a tune that I did remember certainly, I really enjoy his singing, but you know, some of the lines I'm not hearing them very clearly in the moment now. Even, you know, I listen to a number of groups for whom that is the case. A good example that just immediately came to my mind. Well, actually, it wouldn't be this one. It'd be this one. The original Voodoo Glow Skull singer. It's a punk band, if you're not familiar. And yeah, like when you first hear him sing, it's like, I don't think I got a single word from that line. But over time, you just keep listening, you start picking it up. So, as I mentioned in the last video, when I do these reactions, you know, I do them live in sort of the natural kind of intimate setting here when I listen to it, but then I do successive listens, you know, with headphones on, like proper, you know, sort of fully immersive listens. So hopefully in successive listens I will pick up on, some more of the lines, but if you do have an insight or an angle on some of the lyrics there, please do let me know. I always appreciate you know, information coming from fans who know these groups for longer.